Good afternoon. We are all aware of the recent weather events across much of the country. Of course, a storm dumped 8 to 12 inches of heavy, wet snow on most areas of the U.S. Here in Gary, we worked through about 3 inches of snow in late January, but recently we were hit with 10 inches of snow over this past weekend. In late December, we released a snow and ice removal plan for our city. It included details on ways that we would clear our streets following a major snowstorm and other events. And this was done in order to make things clear to our residents of how we would proceed and how we would clear our streets and thoroughfares. Our Director of Public Works, Ms. Marianetta Barber, and our Deputy Director of Public Works, Rachel Morgan-Caesar, worked with our General Services Department to build the plan, and it paid off. I must commend our staff for the work that they did in clearing out main streets and many of our side streets. They followed the plan, and they earned my praise as well as the praise of the Gary Common Council and many of our residents for all of the work that they did. Soon after our team went into action on the original snow and removal plan, one challenge became very, very clear, and that is that we need equipment. We have the staff to do the job, but we, as I said, need equipment. This is something that we're going to continue to pursue, and we'll be convening the members of our cabinet as well as other members of the administration in order to address this very critical problem. These guys, again, as I said, they work very hard, but they have to have the equipment to do their work. In fact, in this last week, the work was hampered because of a lack of equipment, and they need to do the best job that they possibly can. I also want to mention one issue that we faced, and that is that we use vehicles, the same vehicles rather, to plow snow that we use for other functions throughout the year. This put a tremendous amount of wear and tear on our vehicles, and it strains the men and women who maintain and run operations on a daily basis. We have to find a way, buckle down, and find a way that we can give our hard-working men and women more of the equipment that they need, and to do the best job possible, they have to have equipment. I can't stress that enough. Over the next several days, we're expecting more snow and ice, and I'm confident that our team will do everything within their will and power to clear our streets in as timely a manner as possible. I have 2 requests. First, for our residents and business owners, please be patient. We're doing everything that we can to stay safe and make sure that we safely clear all of our thoroughfares. For the Common Council leaders, I thank you for your support, and I appreciate your words and sentiments to our team. Now, let's work together and find ways to get the resources that we need to give our workers better equipment and certainly to clear our streets. With that, I welcome Rachel Morgan-Caesar, our Deputy Director of Public Works. Ms. Caesar.
Thank you, Mayor Prince. And to the list of thanks that you've indicated, please allow me to personally add mine to the administration, to the council, and to all of our community partners. That includes Gary Sanitary District, Parks, Fire, and Police, who have all answered the call to help us in our snow removal efforts. So thank you for that, and we certainly look forward to continuing working with you. Let me begin with tomorrow, or the upcoming snow event, which is largely forecasted as an ice event. And this is very important in that our removal efforts look very differently when we're dealing with plowing with snow versus removing ice. I can say that the city of Gary has more than adequate supply of salt. We are currently sitting on more than 1,000 tons, and we have an equal amount on the way. So salt has not been an issue throughout this entire administration, and for that we are grateful. I wanted to kind of reinforce some of the things that Mayor Prince said, along with kind of giving the audience and residents a reminder of the things that they can do to help make us more effective. I appreciate Mayor's commitment, the council's commitment to getting the general services staff, because these men and women are performing really nothing short of miracles with what we're working with, and they do it valiantly, but I think we all have an obligation to kind of beef up our resources, so I'm so happy to hear that. But as it relates to what residents can do, first of all, we thank you for your patience. We often hear about the 54 or so square miles in the city of Gary, and I mentioned to the mayor that Gary has more than 400 road miles, all of which we have the expectation of maintaining. So just to kind of try to provide some context, and that leads us directly to our plowing priority. And as we all saw during the last weather event, our plan calls for a 24-hour timeline at the end of snowfall. We actually came out ahead of that timeline as it relates to the major thoroughfares. But because of the drifting conditions and the wind conditions, and that coupled with some equipment needs, we are still working to plow some of our side streets, but I'm more concerned about removing the ice before the next event. We are expecting nothing short of Arctic temperatures, and at a point, salt is prohibited or its ability to work is greatly diminished. So our goal for tomorrow, when the weather is expected, but we're also expecting, along with that, a significant rise in temperature. Right now, it's calling for close to 40 degrees. So we will be running 2 12-hour shifts starting tomorrow at 7 o'clock and throughout this weather event, with the goal of removing as much snow and ice from the roadway as possible before the deep freeze settles in on Friday, so that we can keep our roadways clear. So just so you have an idea of our approach for this specific weather event, it is going to be primarily ice, and hopefully tomorrow's temperatures will allow us to get the roadways clear in anticipation of that. I'd also like to reinforce some things that residents can do in the event of snowfall, and if you feel the need to shovel, I can't stress this enough, please don't throw snow back into the road or blow it back into the road. That further inhibits our ability to clear the roadways. If we clear, residents come out, they plow or snowball back into the road, creating the same conditions that we're trying to avoid. So I would certainly ask you to do that. I would also ask that you be mindful of the no parking snow routes. Having cars along those corridors dramatically inhibit our ability to really open the roads up. So weather rarely surprises us, and with the anticipation of this event, I would ask that each person move their car if you're parked along a snow route, so that we can do the work we need to do for the city. Our primary routes are indicated, so that's our first priority, to get those opened wide. And secondary routes, and these are roads that are adjacent to the primary routes, near hospitals, schools, not so much of an issue at this time, but those are the routes that we have committed or try our very best to have plowed within the 48-hour timeline. Tertiary alleys, and this is important because we know that we have a lot of residents who rely on healthcare providers and rely on access to their alleyways. That is our third tier, and because we get so many requests while we're still plowing along our secondary routes, it does pivot us, and we try to accommodate the requests that we get, but just be mindful that when we go into the alleys, it does pivot us away from clearing our secondary routes. I would conclude by saying that I thank all of the residents for your cooperation and for your patience. I would reinforce that the men and women of General Services are working diligently to plan and to be able to carry out the plan that we have, and just to be able to support our city in any way that we can. I would also finally remind you, 311 is the tool to use, especially for snow-related requests. Every time a resident or business owner puts in a request in 311, it is automatically fed to the General Services Department, and our foreman, it goes directly to their phone. So I know people call the mayor's office, they call General Services offices, and you can certainly do that, but you will get a quicker response if you continue to use 311 as appropriate. Thank you again for your time. Thank you to the mayor, to the council, to our partners, and everybody stay warm and stay safe. Thank you.
So it's pretty clear why I asked Rachel to join us today. She's been the deputy director and actually acting as the director of General Services prior to this administration. So she's gained a wealth of experience and knowledge about the conditions of the city, as well as the conditions of, or the lack thereof, of the equipment that we have. But in any event, I've never heard her complain once since I've been here. And to that extent, I'm extremely grateful to you too, Rachel. Thank you, and thank your crews for all of their efforts. You know, finally, I'd just like to add a couple points. So along with commending our crews for their hard work, I have a special announcement about our warming centers in the city of Gary. As many of you know, a number of our team members at City Hall and a group of public safety personnel like Gary Public Transportation Corporation and several nonprofits have created a system of warming centers. Whenever the temperature drops below 32 degrees, we will activate those warming centers for our Gary residents. And we have one center that's open overnight. That the one that's open overnight, rather, is located at the Ambridge Man Center. And again, it's typically activated when the temperatures are below 32 degrees. We have one that's open during the day, which is Brothers Keeper, but that's for men only. And at the end of last month also, the Legacy Foundation, under the direction of President Carolyn Saxton, presented our City of Gary Health Department with 2 checks for $25,000 each for the John S. and John L. Knight Foundation's COVID-19 Response Fund. One check will go towards helping the Health Department COVID-19 vaccination program, and the other will be used to offset operating costs for our warming center networks. These gifts are very generous, and to that end, I thank the Legacy Foundation and everyone involved to help facilitate that for bringing that to the city. But I also want to thank everyone who made the warming centers happen. This is the kind of good news and great gestures that we can use as we continue to reimagine Gary. So once again, thank all of the folks that I named early. I didn't mention the Continuum of Care, which is run by Dr. Sharon Liggins, and I'm certain that there are other partners, Edgewater Systems for Balanced Living. Anthem has been extremely instrumental in providing extra gear and cold weather apparatus for individuals who are less fortunate than many of us, but who find themselves certainly in precarious situations relative to the weather. Once again, I want to say thank you to all of you, and as we always say, please continue to be as safe as you possibly can. Thank you very much.